Good morning, everyone. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope that you're had a good weekend. We're gonna continue working on research in psychology. Now, last week we talked about case studies. Today we're talking about observation and laboratory testing. So basically, we're going into like when you cannot study a specific person or do a naturalistic observation. Is what do you do then? And sometimes you can't always use a natural setting, as people like Skinner and Pavlov discovered. And in fact, like B.F. Skinner actually took this into like account when he started making his own experiments, because he began this idea of he would make special boxes for his rats and put levers on these boxes when pressed that would distribute food. And the idea was that he was going to see how these animals would react and make his assumptions accordingly. And so they would take what are known as controlled settings, where the scientists control the outcomes and the nature of the test in order to reach their conclusions. So they use them for people too. So, for example, researchers wanted to know whether the amount of light in a room would affect how much people would eat. So they built a lab where they would control the lighting. So, bright lights, dim lights, etc. So that's laboratory observation. So this is study of behavior in a controlled situation. You control the environment. Now, the testing method, which is involving the use of psychological tests. So there are intelligence tests, which measure general learning ability. There's aptitude tests, which measures people's character traits and temperament. And like an example there, you can use these to tell if people are more socially outgoing or aggressive, or you can diagnose psychological problems like anxiety or depression. If you ever go to the doctor and they give you a depression screen, you answer the questions and they will determine, you answer them honestly. That's what you always have to do. You have to answer honestly. That they will diagnose some of these problems using those screens. Now, another way to do this is through surveys, which you study, you give out and interview groups, you question them with a questionnaire, and you can get a large portion of people's attitudes and behavior. Now, for the most part, this is most done in politics. You'll hear a lot about that in the coming days, especially with the election coming up. But you'll hear about how they did these polls and surveys of questions. Now, the problem is that there are some advantages, because you can gather large amounts of info from a large amount of people for relatively cheap. It doesn't take much effort, or at least not as much effort. However, there are some disadvantages. So in 1992, a survey asked, does it seem possible or does it seem impossible to you that the Nazi extermination of the Jews never happened? Now, this is a very confusing question. What? What is that trying to ask? So because it was phrased confusingly, the results were not accurate. And another example, after President Clinton's speech in which he admitted his affair with an intern, surveys showed a 20 percentage point drop in his ratings. However, the wording had been changed. When the previous wording was used, only a 5-point drop occurred. So just how the question's worded can change the outcome of the question. In 1936, the magazine Literacy Digest predicted that Alfred Landon would defeat Franklin Roosevelt by 11 million votes. Their sample was biased because they conducted their poll by phone, and in 1936, only the wealthy had phones and the wealthy favored Landon. Everybody else voted for Roosevelt, and he won pretty handily. Now, the thing is, it's another example. It's college surveys of cheating are difficult to conduct because students are reluctant to reveal information about themselves that is not positive. So a survey is at its best when people are truly honest. But if people aren't honest, then your results will not be accurate. So this can be problematic. Okay, now suppose you wanted to survey students here at Haughton. How would you survey a representative sample of the total student population? You may choose a random sample, one in which every person in the entire group has an equal chance of participating. You would not send each of them a questionnaire. Rather, you would aim for a representative sample, say by using a table of random numbers to pick participants from a student listing and then making sure you involve as many people as possible. So you have, like, this is what is known as a population, or like, so your population is the overall group. And you have your random sample, which is just a small group of that thing. Is just picked kind of randomly. Now, if everyone in the target population didn't have a chance to participate, well, that's another thing, which is called a bias sample. So if everybody doesn't have a chance to participate, it's biased. And then you also have so the thing is that not even a truly random sample can create a perfectly representative sample. The people selected may happen to be slightly different from the people not selected. This is what's known as a sampling error. And not everyone who is randomly selected will agree to participate, which is a non-response error. So these are all things you have to take into account when you're doing the stats. And then there's also the stratified sample, which is that 12% of the American population is African American. So a stratified sample of the American population would be thus 12%. So if you were trying to get like the typical groupings, then you would have to create your proportions. Again, there's a lot of math involved, but this also stuff you have to take into account when you're doing your research. And then there's other research methods, like a longitudinal method, which unfortunately there's a pretty it takes place over a long period of time, and it just varies from group to group. So a psychologist researching how people learn language may start monitoring 6-month-old kids over a period of 2 to 3 years to see how they progress. And, this is especially important for doing periods where time is a major factor. And then there's a cross-sectional method. So you do not follow similar groups or group over time, but you select similar samples of different ages and compare behaviors of the different age groups. So say with the 6-month-old babies, a researcher may observe a group of 6-month-olds, a group of 8-month-olds, and a group of 1-year-olds, et cetera, to try to get an idea. So this goes faster, but again, since you're not seeing the actual development of each group, it may skew your results some. But these are just some of the research methods that scientists use psychologists use particularly, to help get their results and learn the different factors of psychology. Okay, I'm going to thank you for listening today. I hope you have a great day. We will continue on our next section, which is experiment design. So I hope you will hope you're continuing to watch the videos. I'll see you tomorrow, and I'm also ready for the 21st when we get to come together. All right, y'all have a good day. Bye.